back to the timpani. Good. Much better. I know what you're thinking.
No, it's all right.
No, you can say it. The cellos are rubbish.
I'm not really a judge of music.
I was scraping the bottom of the barrel, and that's how they sound. And what about the horns? Should I persevere with them?
The horns?
Brazen to a man, but mealy-mouthed. Butter wouldn't melt. When I try to reason with them, they purse their lips. Tell me, do you have an opinion on the fungoid log roller spreading wet rot through the woodwind? Not to speak of the glockenspiel.
Glockenspiel?
I asked you not to speak of it. Give me a word for the harpist.
I don't really...
Plucky. A harpist who rushes in where a fool would fear to tread. With all my problems, you'd think I'd be spared exquisite irony. I've got a blue-arsed bassoon, a blue-lipped contrabassoon, an organ-grinder's chimpanzee, and the bass drum is in urgent need of a dermatologist.
Your condition is interesting.
I've got a violin section, which is to violin playing what Heifetz is to water polo. I've got a tubercular great-nephew of John Philip Sousa who goes when he should be going pa, and the Jew's harp has applied for a visa. I'm seriously thinking of getting a new orchestra. Do you read music?
No.
Don't worry. Crotchets, minims, sharp flat. Every good boy deserves favour. You'll pick it up in no time. What is your instrument?
I do not play an instrument.
Percussion? Strings? Brass?
No.
Reed? Keyboard?
No, I'm afraid not.
I'm amazed. Not keyboard. Wait a minute. Flute?
No. Really?
Extraordinary. Give me a clue. If I beat you to a pulp, would you try to protect your face or your hands? Which would be the more serious, if you couldn't sit down for a week or couldn't stand up? I'm trying to narrow it down, you see. Can I take it you do not stick this instrument up your arse in a kneeling position?
I do not play an instrument.
You can speak frankly. You will find I am without prejudice. I have invited musicians into my own house, and you know why? Because we all have some musician in us. Any man who says he's no musician in him, I call that man a bigot. Listen, I've had clarinet players eating at my own table. I've had French whores and gigolos speak to me in the public street. I mean horns. I mean piccolos. So don't worry about me, maestro. I've sat down with them, drummers even, sharing a plate of tagliatelle Verdi and stuffed Puccini. Why, I know people who make the orchestra eat in the kitchen, off scraps, the way you'd throw a trombone to a dog. I mean a second violinist. I mean to the lions. I love musicians. I respect them. Human beings, to a man. Let me put it like this. If I smashed this instrument of yours over your head, would you need a carpenter, a welder, or a brain surgeon?
I do not play an instrument. If I played an instrument, I would tell you what it was, but I do not play one. I have never played one. I don't know how to play one. I am not a musician.
And what the hell are you doing here?
I was put here.
What for?
For slander.
What a fool. Never speak ill of a musician. Those bastards won't rest. They're animals.
This was political.
Let me give you some advice. Number one, never mix music with politics. Number two, never confide in your psychiatrist. Number three, practice.
Thank you.
Well, are you colourblind?
No.
Let me see your music. Very well. Now, what are the red notes?
Strings.
Green.
Tambourine.
Purple.
Drum.
Yellow.
Triangle.
Do you see 40 yellow notes in a row?
No.
What then? Detention is becoming a family tradition. Your name is notorious. Did you know that?
Yes.
How did you know?
Everybody tells me.
Open a book.
What book?
Any book. Fathers and Sons, perhaps. Is it Turgenev?
It's my geometry book.
Yes, your name goes round the world. By telegram. It is printed in the newspapers. It is spoken on the radio. With such a famous name, why should you bother with different colours? We'll change the music for you. It'll look like a field of buttercups and sound like dinner time.
I don't want to be in the orchestra.
Open the book. Pencil and paper. You see what happens to antisocial malcontents.
Shall I be sent to the lunatics' prison?
Certainly not. Read aloud.
A point has position, but no dimension.
The asylum is for malcontents who don't know what they're doing.
A line has length, but no breadth.
They know what they're doing, but they don't know it's antisocial.
A straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points.
They know it's antisocial, but they're fanatics.
A circle is the path of a point moving equidistant to a given point.
They're sick.
A polygon is a plane area bounded by straight lines.
And it's not a prison, it's a hospital.
A triangle is the polygon bounded by the fewest possible sides.
Good. Perfect. Copy neatly 10 times. And if you're a good boy, I might find you a better instrument.
Bounded by the fewest possible sides. Is this what they make Papa do?
Yes. They make him copy, I am a member of an orchestra and we must play together.
How many times?
1 million.
1 million?
Sasha.
Hush!
Sasha!
Dinner time.
Sorry, Maestro.
All right. All right, all right. I'm sorry about that, Doctor.
I'll have your gut for garters!
Sit down, please.
I understand.
Did the pills help at all?
I don't know. What pills did you give them?
Now look, there is no orchestra. We cannot make progress until we agree that there is no orchestra.
Or until we agree that there is.
But there is no orchestra. I have an orchestra, but you do not.
Does that seem reasonable to you?
It just happens to be so. I play in an orchestra occasionally. It is my hobby. It is a real orchestra. Yours is not. I am a doctor. You are a patient. If I tell you you do not have an orchestra, it follows you do not have an orchestra. If you tell me you have an orchestra, it follows that you do not have an orchestra. Or rather, it does not follow that you do have an orchestra.
I'm perfectly happy not to have an orchestra.
Good.
I never asked to have an orchestra.
Keep saying to yourself, I have no orchestra. I have never had an orchestra. I do not want an orchestra.
Absolutely.
There is no orchestra.
All right.
Good.
There is one thing you can do for me.
Yes?
Will you stop them playing?
They will stop playing when you understand they do not exist.
I have no orchestra. I have never had an orchestra. I do not want an orchestra. There is no orchestra. I can't control them.
Please.
Don't worry, I know how to handle myself. If any trumpeter comes at me, I'll kick his teeth in. Violin players get it under the chin to boot. This boot, and God help anyone who plays the cello. Do you play a musical instrument?
No!
Then you've got nothing to worry about. Tell me about yourself, your home, your childhood, your first piano teacher. How did it all begin?
One day, they arrested a friend of mine for possessing a controversial book. And they kept him in mental hospitals for 1.5 years. I thought this was an odd thing to do. Soon after he got out, they arrested a couple of writers, A and B, who had published some stories abroad under different names. Under their own names, they got 5 years and 7 years hard labor. I thought this was most peculiar. My friend, C, demonstrated against the arrest of A and B, and I told him he was crazy to do it, and they put him back into the mental hospital. D was a man who wrote to various people about the trial of A and B, and held meetings with his friends, E, F, G, and H, who were all arrested. So, I, J, K, L, and a fifth man demonstrated against the arrest of E, F, G, and H, and were themselves arrested. D was arrested the next day. The fifth man was my friend C, who had just got out of the mental hospital where they put him for demonstrating against the arrest of A and B, and I told him he was crazy to demonstrate against the arrest of E, F, G, and H. And he got 3 years in a labor camp. I thought this really wasn't fair. M compiled a book on the trials of C, I, J, K, and L, and with his friends, N, O, P, Q, R, and S, attended the trial of T, who had written a book about his experiences in a labor camp, and who got 1 year in a labor camp. During the trial, it was learned that the Russian army had gone to the aid of Czechoslovakia. So, N, O, P, Q, R, and S decided to demonstrate in Red Square the following Sunday, when they were all arrested and variously disposed of in labor camps, psychiatric hospitals, and internal exile. 3 years had passed since the trial of A and B. C finished his sentence about the same time as A. And then he did something really crazy. He started telling everybody that sane people were being put in mental hospitals for their political opinions. By the time B finished his sentence, C was on trial for anti-Soviet agitation and slander. And he got 7 years in prison and labor camps, and 5 years exile. See all the trouble writers cause. They spoil things for ordinary people. My childhood was uneventful. My adolescence was normal. I got an ordinary job. I married a conventional girl who died, uncontroversially, in childbirth. Until the child was 7, the only faintly interesting thing about me was that I had a friend who kept getting arrested. Then one day I did something really crazy.
So this is how I'm repaid. Is this how things began with your father? First, he smashes school property. Later, he keeps bad company. Finally, slanderous letters. Lies. To his superiors, to the party, to the newspapers, to foreigners.
Papa doesn't lie. He beat me when I did it.
Lies. Bombarding Pravda with lies. What did he expect?
They put me in a Leningrad special psychiatric hospital on Arsenalnia Street, where I was kept for 30 months, including 2 months on hunger strike. They don't like you to die unless you can die anonymously. If your name is known in the West, it is an embarrassment. The bad old days were over long ago. Things are different now. Russia is a civilized country, very good at Swan Lake and space technology. And it's confusing if people starve themselves to death. So, after a couple of weeks, they brought my son to persuade me to eat. But although by this time he was 9 years old, he was uncertain what to say.
I got a letter from abroad with our picture in the newspaper.
What did it say?
I don't know. It was all in English.
How's school?
All right. I've started geometry. It's horrible.
How's Babushka?
All right. You smell like Olga when she does her nails.
Who's Olga?
She has your room. Until you come back.
Good.
Do they make you paint your nails here?
If you don't eat for a long time, you start to smell of acetone, which is the stuff girls use for taking the paint off their fingernails. When the body runs out of protein and carbohydrate, it starts to metabolize its own fat. And acetone's the waste product. To put this another way, a girl removing her nail varnish smells of starvation. After a couple of months, she could have removed nail varnish with my urine. So they brought Sasha back. But when he saw me, he couldn't speak.
Papa!
And then they gave in. And when I was well enough, they brought me here. This means they've decided to let me go. It's much harder to get from Arsenalnia to a civil hospital than from a civil hospital to the street, but it has to be done right. They don't want to lose any ground. They need a formula. It'll take a little time, but that's all right. I shall read War and Peace. Everything's going to be all right.
is the shortest distance between 3 points.
Rubbish.
A circle is the longest distance to the same point.
Sasha.
A plain area bordered by high walls is a prison and not a hospital.
Be quiet.
I don't care! He was never sick at home. Never!
Stop crying. Everything is going to be all right.
Come in. Hello, you must be Ivanov. Do you play a musical instrument?
Are you a patient?
No. I am a doctor. You are a patient. It's a distinction we try to keep going here, though I'm told it's coming under scrutiny in more advanced circles of psychiatric medicine. Yes, if everybody in the world played a violin, I'd be out of a job.
As a psychiatrist?
No, as a violinist. The psychiatric hospitals would be packed to the doors. You obviously don't know much about musicians. Welcome to the 3rd Civil Mental Hospital. What can I do for you?
I have a complaint.
Yes, I know. Pathological development of the personality with paranoid delusions.
No, there's nothing the matter with me.
There you are, you see.
My complaint is about the man in my cell.
Ward.
He thinks he has an orchestra.
Yes, he has an identity problem. I forget his name.
His behavior is aggressive.
He complains about you, too. Apparently, you coughed during the diminuendos.
Is there anything you can do?
Certainly. Suck one of these every 4 hours.
But he's a raving lunatic.
Of course. The idea that all the people locked up in mental hospitals are sane, while the people walking about outside are all mad, is merely a literary conceit put about by people who should be locked up. I assure you there's not much in it. Taken as a whole, the sane are out there and the sick are in here. For example, you are here because you have delusions that sane people are put in mental hospitals.
But I am in a mental hospital.
That's what I said. If you're not prepared to discuss your case rationally, we're going to go round in circles. Did you say you didn't play a musical instrument, by the way?
No. Could I be put in a cell on my own?
Now, look. Let's get this clear. This is what is called an ordinary psychiatric hospital. That is to say, a civil mental hospital which comes under the Ministry of Health. And we have wards. Cells is what they have in prisons and also possibly in what are called special psychiatric hospitals which come under the Ministry of Internal Affairs and are for prisoners who represent a special danger to society, or rather patients. No, you didn't say, or no, you don't play one.
Could I be put in a ward on my own?
I'm afraid not. Colonel, or rather Dr. Roginski, who's taken over your case, chose your cell, or rather ward mate, personally.
But he might kill me.
We have to assume that Roginski knows what's best for you. So in my opinion, you need a psychiatrist.
You mean the Colonel's not really a doctor?
Of course he's a doctor. And he's proud to serve the state in any capacity, though he wasn't actually trained in psychiatry as such.
What is his specialty?
Semantics. He's a doctor of philology, whatever that means. I'm told he's a genius.
I won't see him.
It may not be necessary. Seems to me the best answer for you is to go home. Would Thursday suit you?
Thursday?
Why not? There's an examining commission on Wednesday. We'd aim at curing your schizophrenia by Tuesday night, if possible by 7 o'clock, because I have a concert. Take one of these every 4 hours.
What are they?
A mild laxative.
For schizophrenia?
The layman often doesn't realize that medicine advances in a series of imaginative leaps.
Oh. I shall have to read War and Peace some other time.
Yes. Incidentally, when you go before the commission, try not to make any remark which might confuse them. I shouldn't mention War and Peace unless they mention it first. The sort of things I'd stick to are, yes, if they ask you whether you agree you are mad. No, if they ask you if you intend to persist in your slanders. Definitely, if they ask you whether your treatment was satisfactory. And sorry, if they ask you how you feel about it all or don't catch the question.
I was never mad, and my treatment was barbaric.
Stupidity is one thing I can't cure. I have to show that I have treated you. You have to recant and show gratitude for that treatment. We have to act together.
The KGB broke my door and frightened my son and my mother-in-law. My madness
consisted of writing to various people about a friend of mine who is in prison. This friend was twice put in mental hospitals for political reasons, and then they arrested him for saying that sane people were put in mental hospitals. And then they put him in prison because he was sane when he said this. And I said so, and they put me in a mental hospital. And you're quite right. In the Arsenal near, they have cells. There are bars on the windows, peepholes in the doors, and the lights burn all night. It's run just like a jail, with warders and trustees, only the regime is more strict. And the male nurses are convicted criminals, serving sentences for theft and violent crimes. And they beat and humiliate the patients and steal their food, and are protected by the doctors, some of whom come to work wearing KGB uniforms under their white coats. For the politicals, punishment and medical treatment are intimately related. I was given injections of aminazine, sulfazine, tryptazine, haloperidol, and insulin, which caused swellings, cramps, headaches, trembling, fever, and the loss of various abilities, including the ability to read, write, sleep, sit, stand, unbutton my trousers. When all this failed to improve my condition, I was stripped and bound head to foot with lengths of wet canvas. As the canvas dried, it became tighter and tighter until I lost consciousness. They did this to me for 10 days in a row, and still my condition did not improve. Then I went on hunger strike. And when they saw I intended to die, they lost their nerve. And now you think I'm going to crawl out of here, thanking them for curing me of my delusions? Oh, no. They lost, and they will have to see that it is so. They've forgotten their mortality. Losing may be their first touch of it for a long time.
What about your son? He's turning into a delinquent. He's a good boy. He deserves a father.
Things have changed since the bad old days. When I was a girl, there were terrible excesses. A man accused, like your father, might well have been blameless. Now things are different. The Soviet Constitution guarantees freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, of assembly, of worship, and many other freedoms. The Soviet Constitution has always been the most liberal in the world, ever since the first Constitution was written, after the Revolution.
Who wrote it?
His name was Nikolai Bukharin.
Can we ask Nikolai Bukharin about Papa?
Unfortunately, he was shot soon after he wrote the Constitution. Everything was different in those days. Terrible things happened.
You've got a long way to go.
Well, Prince, Genoa and Lucca are no more than the private estates of the Bonaparte family. If you dare to deny that, this means war!
mon brave. Every member of the orchestra carries a conductor's baton in his knapsack. Your turn will come.
Ivanov! Ivanov! Ivanov? Your behavior is causing alarm. I'm beginning to think you're off your head. Quite apart from being a paranoid schizophrenic. I have to consider seriously whether an ordinary hospital can deal with your symptoms.
I have no symptoms, I have opinions.
Your opinions are your symptoms. Your disease is dissent. Your kind of schizophrenia does not presuppose changes of the personality noticeable to others. I might compare your case to that of Pyotr Grigorenko, of whom it has been stated by our leading psychiatrists at the Serbsky Institute that his outwardly well-adjusted behavior and coherent utterances were indicative of a pathological development of the personality. Are you getting the message? I can't help you. And furthermore, your breath stinks of aeroplane glue or something. What have you been eating?
Nothing.
And that's something else. We've never had a hunger strike here before, except once, and that was in protest against the food, which is psychologically coherent. And it did wonders for the patient's morale, though not for the food. You can choose your own drugs. You don't even have to take them. Just say you took them. Well, what do you want?
I want to get back to the bad old times when a man got a sentence appropriate to his crimes. 10 years hard for a word out of place, 25 years if they didn't like your face, and no one pretended you were off your head in the good old archipelago you're either well or dead.
Hey, stop it! My God. How long can you go on like that?
In the Arsenalnia, I wasn't allowed writing materials on medical grounds. If you want to remember things, it helps if they rhyme.
You gave me a dreadful shock. I thought I'd discovered an entirely new form of mental disturbance. Immortality smiled upon me, one quick smile, and was gone.
Your name may not be entirely lost to history.
What do you mean? It's not me. I'm told what to do. Look. If you need something, I'll send for your son.
I don't want him to come here.
If you don't need something, I'll send for your son. You mustn't be so rigid. Did the pills help at all?
I don't know.
Do you believe that sane people are put in mental hospitals?
Yes.
They didn't help.
I gave them to Ivanov. His name is also Ivanov.
So it is. That's why Colonel, or rather Dr. Roginski, insisted you shared his cell, or rather ward.
Because we have the same name.
The man's a genius. The layman often doesn't realize that medicine advances
I
in this...
know. I gave them to Ivanov because he's been having my rations. He needed a laxative.
Next. Ah, hello, Ivanov. Did the pills help at all?
I have no orchestra.
Wait a minute. What day is it?
I have never had an orchestra.
What day is it? Tuesday?
I do not want an orchestra.
What time is it? I shall be late for the orchestra.
There is no orchestra.
Of course there's a bloody orchestra.
I've always had an orchestra. I always knew I had an orchestra.
Alexander Ivanov, sir.
Absolutely correct. Who are you?
Alexander Ivanov, sir.
The boy's a fool.
They said to come, sir. Is it about my father?
What is his name?
Alexander Ivanov, sir.
This place is a madhouse.
I know, sir. Are you the doctor?
Ivanov. Of course. Sad case.
What's the matter with him?
Tone deaf. Are you musical at all?
No, sir.
What is your instrument?
Triangle, sir. Is it about that I'm here?
Certainly. What else?
Drum, sir.
What?
Please don't make me stay. I'll go back in the orchestra.
You can be in mine.
I can't play anything. Really?
Everyone is equal to the triangle. That is the first axiom of Euclid, the Greek musician. The second axiom. It is easier for a sick man to play the triangle than for a camel to play the triangle. The third axiom, even a camel can play the triangle. The pons asinorum of Euclid, anyone can play the triangle no matter how sick.
Yes, sir, please will you put me with Papa?
The 5 postulates of Euclid. A triangle with a base is a combo. Two triangles sharing the same base is a trio.
Are you the doctor?
A trombone is the longest distance between 2 points.
You're not the doctor.
A string has length but no point.
Papa!
What is the golden rule?
Papa!
A line must be drawn.
Papa, where have they put you?
Dear Sasha, don't be sad. It would have been 10 times as bad if we hadn't had the times we had, so think of that and please be glad. I kiss you now, your loving Dad. Don't let them tell you I was mad.
Papa, don't be rigid. Everything can be all right.
Dear Sasha, try to see that what they call their liberty is just the freedom to agree that 1 and 1 is sometimes 3. I kiss you now. Remember me. Don't neglect your geometry.
Papa, don't be rigid. Everything can be all right.
Dear Sasha, when I'm dead, I'll be living in your head, which is what your mama said. Keep her picture by your bed. I kiss you now. And don't forget, if you're brave, the best is yet.
Papa, don't be rigid. Be brave and tell them lies. Tell them lies. Tell them they've cured you. Tell them you're grateful.
How can that be right?
If they're wicked, how can it be wrong?
It helps them to go on being wicked. It helps people to think that perhaps they're not so wicked after all.
It doesn't matter. I want you to come home.
And what about all the other fathers and mothers?
It's wicked to let yourself die.
Ivanov! Dear Sasha, be glad of. Kiss Mama's picture. Goodbye.
Ivanov!
Dear Sasha, I love you. I hope you love me too. To thine own self be true. 1 and 1 is always 2. I kiss you now. Adieu. There was nothing else to do.
Ivanov!
Did you persuade him?
He's going to die.
I'm not allowed to let him die.
Then let him go.
I'm not allowed to let him go until he admits he's cured.
Then he'll die.
He'd rather die than admit he's cured. This is madness. And it's not allowed.
Then you'll have to let him go.
I'm not allowed to. It's a logical impasse. Did you tell him he mustn't be so rigid?
If you want to get rid of Papa, you must not be rigid.
tell the Colonel. He's a genius, but he can't do the impossible.
Alexander Ivanov?
Yes.
Do you believe that sane people are put in mental hospitals?
Excuse me,
Shut
Doctor.
up. Well, would a Soviet doctor put a sane man in a lunatic asylum, in your opinion?
I shouldn't think so. Why?
Quite right. How do you feel?
Fit as a fiddle, thank you.
Quite right. Alexander Ivanov?
Yes?
Do you have an orchestra?
Ah.
Shut up. Well?
No.
Do you hear any music of any kind?
No.
How do you feel?
All right.
Manners.
Thank you.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with these men. Get them out of here.
Yes, Colonel Doctor.
Sasha?